There are two pieces of background information that we were just starting to work on right before coronavirus quarantine that are really important for solving these percent problems. The first one is understanding how to find a percent of a number. I mean, some of these we can think about in our heads. Like if I asked you what is 50% of 60, most of you guys know that 50% is the same as 1/2, and you could tell me that 1/2 of 60 is actually 30. And that's right, but I want to think about another way to do this. When you're doing that problem, you're actually taking 1/2 and you're multiplying it by 60. When we multiply straight across. So we end up with 60 divided by 2, which is 30. Okay, we know we should get 30, but a faster way to get that with percents, and if you remember to right before school was canceled, we were actually working on this in class, is to turn your percent into a decimal and multiply. So I know that 50%, if I change that to a decimal, by dividing by 100 is the same as 0.50. You can either divide by 100 to get that, or you can move the decimal place 2 places this way. This of, just like we multiplied when we were turned it into a fraction, is the same as multiplying. And then I have a 60 right here. So if I get out my calculator, and if I do 0.50 times 60, I'm still going to end up with 30. So if I'm looking at the next problem, I want to think first about what is 32% as a decimal. You are right if you said that it is 0.32. Now I know that of means times, and my number is 72 here. So I am doing 0.32 times 72, and I end up with 23.04. Okay, so that's kind of like the basis for what we need to know here. And now I'm going to take it to another level. So now I'm trying to figure out, what am I going to pay if I have this 40% off sale at the store? Well, there's kind of two ways to think about this. One way to think about it is that if something is 40% off, okay, that's what I save. So that's kind of like the savings or the free part. Well, if I save 40% of the original, I'm going to end up paying 60% of the original, okay? So this is what we pay. And if we want to find the cost, that's what we're trying to figure out, what we are paying. So one way to think about these problems is to think about, okay, what is 60% of each of these numbers? So if I want to find out what I pay, and it's 40% off, I know I'm going to pay 60%. So I'm going to try to find 60% of 100. Well, I know that's the same as 0.60 times 100, which is $60. Now that doesn't always make the most sense for people, or some people do this a little bit differently. So here's another option. If I start without thinking about what do I pay, and I just say, okay, what's 40% of 100? Well, that's the same as 0.40 times 100. And if you do that math, you end up with $40. But the thing is, like, that 40 right there, that's not what you pay, that's what you save. So the original price was 100, you're still going to subtract 40 and end up with $60. 100 was kind of a nice, easy example because it was percent is out of 100, so it's a little bit easier to think about. Let's do one that's not 100. So if the original price of something is 30, we're going to do this both ways. So one way to find this is to figure out, okay, what is 60% of $30? Well, I can turn 60% into 0.60, and I know that of means to multiply. And then I can do 0.60, I'm getting out my calculator, times 30, and I figure out that, oh, well, that's $18. Now, if I think about it the other way, and instead of going straight to, well, I'm going to pay 60%, I start with figuring out 40% of 30. Well, 40% is 0.4 times 30. And if I get out my calculator, I'm going to end up with $12. But remember, again, that's not what you pay, that's what you save. So we're still going to have to take $30 and subtract $12 and we also end up with $18, okay? So I'm hoping that that's like a little basic understanding of the percent problems, and then we're gonna do a couple of examples from page 14. No, I'm sorry, page 20 of the packet.